Okay, let's get into it. Today, we're doing a deep dive into this microscopic, but frankly brutal conflict that's happening inside all of us all the time.
Hmm.
We're talking about the world of free radicals and the body's, incredibly sophisticated defenses against them.
Molecular, enzymatic, nutritional, it's a whole system.
Exactly. And our mission here is really to shortcut you straight to the core of this. We're going to cover the fundamental chemistry, look at the damage they cause, and then get into well, the surprisingly complicated side of antioxidant nutrients.
Right. And why what we think we know about supplements can be misleading.
Yes, exactly. This is about understanding why some of them fail, or even worse, can backfire.
And we should probably put the stakes on the table right away. Free radicals, I mean, they are a core threat.
They really are.
Even though they're just a natural byproduct of, being alive, their very nature is destructive. They cause this indiscriminate damage to, well, everything. DNA, proteins, the lipids in our cell membranes.
Every major component.
Yeah, every single one. And this constant chemical warfare is directly linked to some of our biggest chronic diseases. We're talking cancer, atherosclerosis, coronary artery disease, even autoimmune conditions.
So if you want to understand the silent killers of the modern world,
You have to understand this molecular threat.
that sets us up perfectly. So we'll start with what these radicals are, how they break down our cellular architecture. Then we'll look at where they come from. Some sources are surprising.
Very surprising.
And finally, the body's defense systems, which leads right into the big mystery, the antioxidant paradox that's forcing a total rethink of supplementation.
It really is a paradox.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly is a free radical? We hear the term all the time.
Chemically, it's actually pretty simple. It's any molecule that has an unpaired electron.
Okay.
Electrons, they want to be in pairs and makes them stable. So a molecule with a solo electron is incredibly unstable, incredibly reactive,
Desperate to find a partner.
desperate, and it will do anything to get one.
And I imagine that desperation is the source of the danger. How long do they even exist for?
We're talking fractions of a nanosecond. I mean, less than a flicker.
Wow.
But that speed is its weapon. When a radical hits another molecule, it rips an electron off or donates its own to stabilize itself. But here's the crucial part.
Go on.
In stabilizing itself, it turns the molecule it just hit into a new radical.
So it's not a single event, it's a chain reaction.
A self-perpetuating chemical chain reaction.
Exactly.
It's like a domino that, when it falls, creates a brand new, equally unstable domino right next to it.
So how do you stop it?
The only way to quench the reaction is for two radicals to meet and combine their unpaired electrons. But that's rare. Their concentration is so low and they exist for such a short time.
And in biology, we're mostly worried about a group called reactive oxygen species, or ROS.
Yes, things like superoxide, the hydroxyl radical, those are the main culprits.
So what are they attacking in our cells?
Basically everything. Starting with the blueprint, our DNA. A radical can hit one of the bases in our DNA and chemically change it.
And if that's not repaired,
It becomes a permanent heritable mutation. In our body cells, that is a key step toward initiating cancer.
and I find the damage to lipids so insidious because it's not just a direct hit. It's like it creates secondary weapons.
You're talking about lipid peroxidation. It's essentially the chemical rusting of our cell membranes and lipoproteins.
Right.
The radical attacks an unsaturated fatty acid, creates a lipid peroxide, and that peroxide immediately breaks down into these other nasty chemicals called dialdehydes.
And those can travel.
Yes, that's the problem. They're secondary messengers of destruction. They can move away from the original site and go damage proteins or even DNA bases somewhere else in the cell.
And what about proteins themselves?
They get hit directly too. Amino acids get chemically modified. For instance, a tyrosine residue can get oxidized into a compound that, ironically, can go on to create more oxygen radicals.
So the damage actually multiplies the threat.
It does, and this isn't just abstract chemistry. Think about autoimmune disease.
Okay.
When a protein gets modified by a radical or one of those dialdehydes, the immune system might not recognize it anymore. It sees it as non-self.
Like an invader.
Exactly. It launches an attack. And the antibodies it creates can end up cross-reacting with your normal healthy proteins. That's a full-blown autoimmune response started by a single radical.
That is a direct line from a tiny chemical event to a massive systemic disease. Let's talk about another one. Atherosclerosis.
The mechanism there is crystal clear. Normally, your liver has receptors that recognize LDL, the bad cholesterol, and pull it out of your blood.
Great, to clear it.
But if radicals modify the proteins or lipids on that LDL particle, the liver's receptors don't recognize it anymore. They reject it.
So it's stuck in the bloodstream.
It's stuck. And scavenger cells, macrophages, try to clean up the mess. They just gorge themselves on this modified LDL, becoming these lipid-engorged foam cells.
And those are the ones that build up in the artery walls.
They infiltrate the vessel walls, accumulate, die, and that mass of dead, fatty cells forms the core of an atherosclerotic plaque. It all starts with radical damage.
It's just staggering. Okay, so if they're this destructive, where on earth are they coming from? Let's get into the sources.
There are really two big categories: external sources and then our own metabolism.
So things from the outside first.
Ionizing radiation is a big one. X-rays, UV light from the sun. They can literally split water molecules in your body to form hydroxyl radicals instantly.
And what about chemicals?
Transition metals are a huge problem, especially free iron and copper.
Why them specifically?
They can react non-enzymically with oxygen or hydrogen peroxide to churn out those really, really dangerous hydroxyl radicals. This is why the body works so hard to make sure those metals are never just floating around freely.
And even some of our own essential molecules can be a problem, right? Like nitric oxide.
Yes, nitric oxide, which we need for blood vessels to relax, is itself a radical.
Which means it's reactive.
Highly reactive. It can combine with superoxide to form something called peroxynitrite, which then decays and, it yields more hydroxyl radicals.
So a vital signaling molecule can become part of the problem.
In the wrong context, yes. But the single biggest source isn't any of that. It's the simple act of making energy in our own cells, in the mitochondria.
Just breathing.
Just breathing. The electron transport chain, where we turn oxygen into water to make ATP, is an amazing system, but it's leaky.
How leaky are we talking?
Pretty leaky. The sources suggest that about 3 to 5% of all the oxygen you consume every day doesn't get fully converted to water.
It just leaks out.
It leaks out as reactive oxygen species. For an adult, that translates to about 1.5 moles of these damaging species being produced every single day.
That is an enormous amount. It's like producing a backpack full of poison just by living.
It puts the body's defense systems into perspective, doesn't it?
It really does. And then there's the even stranger case where the body makes radicals on purpose.
The respiratory burst.
Right, when we're fighting an infection.
Yes. An activated macrophage, one of our immune cells, when it eats a bacterium, it intentionally revs up its metabolism. It uses an enzyme called NADPH oxidase 2.
To what?
To produce a massive cloud of superoxide and other radicals specifically to kill the microbe it just ate. It's a suicide bomb, essentially.
A necessary self-sacrifice.
Absolutely. And we know it's a taxing process because even with a mild infection, you can measure a significant spike in markers of lipid damage in the blood.
Which brings us perfectly to our third section.
Yeah.
How does the body possibly defend itself against this constant, sometimes deliberate onslaught?
It's a multi-layered defense, and it has to be. It starts with prevention.
Okay.
The most critical step is metal sequestration. We talked about how dangerous free iron and copper are.
Right, they catalyze radical formation.
So the body uses these specialized proteins, transferrin, ferritin, ceruloplasmin, to lock them down tight. Keep them out of free solution so they can't cause trouble.
So step one,
Yeah.
lock up the catalysts.
Exactly. And as a nice side benefit, these protein metal complexes are too big to be filtered by the kidneys, so we don't lose these essential metals in our urine.
Very efficient. So what's step two?
Yeah.
The direct cleanup crew.
That would be the primary enzymatic quenchers. First up is superoxide dismutase, or SOD.
The first responder.
The first responder. SOD finds that superoxide radical and immediately converts it into hydrogen peroxide.
Which, less reactive, but still not great.
Still not great. So right on its heels, you have catalase and other peroxidases. Their only job is to take that hydrogen peroxide and immediately break it down into harmless water and oxygen.
And it's all happening in the same place.
Often, yes. A lot of these superoxide-producing enzymes are located in compartments like the peroxisomes right alongside SOD and catalase. It's an instant cleanup system.
Okay, so that handles the initial burst.
Yeah.
But what about the lipid peroxides, the
Yeah.
cell rust we mentioned? That needs a different system.
A very different system. That's the job of the glutathione system,
Yeah.
specifically an enzyme called glutathione peroxidase.
So what does it do?
It reduces those harmful lipid peroxides into much less destructive hydroxy fatty acids. And critically, this enzyme requires selenium to function.
So that's a direct link between a trace mineral in our diet and this core antioxidant defense,
A vital link. And of course, once glutathione does its job, it becomes oxidized and needs to be recycled.
which requires another enzyme.
Yes, glutathione reductase, which in turn depends on NADPH from our energy pathways. It all connects. The whole system has to be fueled and ready to go.
So this brings us to that third line of defense, the one everyone talks about. The radical trapping antioxidants from our diet, vitamins and so on.
These are the scavengers. You can group them by where they work. In our fatty membranes and lipoproteins, you have the lipid-soluble ones.
Vitamin E, carotene.
Vitamin E or tocopherol,
Yeah.
carotenes, ubiquinone, yes. Then in the watery parts of the cell, you have the water-soluble ones. Vitamin C or ascorbate, uric acid, and all those polyphenols you hear about in foods.
And the partnership between vitamin E and vitamin C is it's a classic example of biochemical elegance. Can you walk us through that?
It's a beautiful system. So vitamin E is embedded in your cell membrane, protecting it. When it neutralizes a lipid peroxide, vitamin E itself becomes a radical, the tocopheroxyl radical.
But it's a safe radical.
It's a relatively stable one, yes. Its unpaired electron gets spread out over the molecule, which is called delocalization. It's like it pauses the danger.
Okay, so it's holding on to the hot potato.
Exactly, and it holds on just long enough to get to the surface of the membrane where it meets water-soluble vitamin C.
And vitamin C takes the hit.
Vitamin C donates an electron, regenerating the vitamin E back to its active form. It's a perfect handoff. The vitamin C becomes a temporary, harmless radical that's quickly recycled.
And that perfect system brings us to the biggest challenge in this entire field, the antioxidant paradox. If this is also elegant, why have these huge clinical trials with high-dose antioxidant supplements been so disappointing and sometimes so harmful?
This is the real turning point in the whole conversation. The assumption was simple. Radicals bad, antioxidants good, so more antioxidants must be better.
It makes logical sense.
It does, but the data just doesn't support it, except in people who were already clinically deficient. In healthy people, high doses often did nothing. And in some really famous cases, they increased mortality.
We even see this weird dual nature with vitamin C. We think of it as the ultimate antioxidant, but it can flip.
It can. At very high concentrations, ascorbate can react with oxygen to form superoxide.
Yeah.
If there are any free copper ions around, it can react with them in a chain reaction that generates those awful hydroxyl radicals.
So it can become a pro-oxidant.
It absolutely can. The body usually prevents this by just excreting any excess, but the potential is there.
And the beta-carotene trials are just the classic, terrifying example of this gone wrong.
Oh, absolutely. The epidemiological data was so strong, people who ate more carotene-rich foods had lower rates of lung cancer.
So the intervention trials were set up with great hope.
Huge hope. And they were a disaster. The groups taking the high-dose beta-carotene supplements had an increase in death from lung cancer and other cancers.
Why? What happened?
It's the environment. Beta-carotene is a great antioxidant in most of your tissues where oxygen levels are low, but in the lungs,
Oxygen is very high.
very high. And at high oxygen and high carotene concentrations, the molecule flips its function. It becomes an autocatalytic pro-oxidant. It starts radical damage instead of stopping it.
That is just a terrifying biological switch.
Yeah.
And we saw something similar with high-dose vitamin E trials for heart disease, right? Increased mortality there, too.
We did. And the problem there goes back to that stable radical we talked about.
The tocopheroxyl radical.
Yes, that stability is great when vitamin C is there to recycle it. But if you flood the system with too much vitamin E, that stable radical can hang around long enough to move deeper into the cell membrane or deeper into a lipoprotein.
Where it can cause more trouble.
Instead of being quenched at the surface, it can initiate more radical damage deeper inside the structure.
So this all leads to the biggest question. If radicals are so bad, why does trying to completely eliminate them with high-dose supplements seem to backfire?
Because we've been looking at them as pure villains. They're not. They are also vital signaling molecules.
Signaling what?
All sorts of things. But most importantly, they're a key signal for apoptosis-programmed cell death.
The body's self-destruct mechanism for damaged cells.
Exactly. It's how your body gets rid of a cell with, say, irreparable DNA damage before it can turn cancerous. That's a radical-dependent signal.
So the hypothesis is?
The hypothesis is that flooding your system with high-dose antioxidants doesn't just block the bad radicals. It blocks the good, necessary signaling radicals, too. You neutralize the self-destruct signal.
And that allows damaged cells, which should have died, to survive.
Potentially increasing your risk of cancer. You're interfering with one of the body's most important quality control systems.
So wrapping this all up, what are the key takeaways for you, the listener? It's
Yeah.
clear. Free radicals are constantly being made. They cause damage linked to major diseases.
But the body's main defense isn't a vitamin pill. It's those incredibly efficient enzymatic systems, SOD, catalase, and the proteins that lock up metals.
And while a diet rich in these nutrients is essential,
High-dose supplementation is a different beast entirely. Things like beta-carotene and vitamin E can flip, become pro-oxidants, and potentially increase risk by interfering with vital cell signals like apoptosis.
which leaves us with a final, really provocative thought to mull over. If the danger here is quenching necessary signals that trigger cell death,
Right.
how should we think about nutrition and health? Should the goal be to maximize antioxidant intake, or should we be focused on something more subtle, like supporting the body's natural regulatory balance?
It's a complex dance, and it proves that, in biochemistry, more of a good thing is not always better. Sometimes it's genuinely harmful.
A fantastic deep dive into the complexity of life, disease, and the unexpected dangers of the supplement aisle. Thank you for joining us as we explore these nuanced biochemical interactions.